can say definitively that religions are all bullshit.
Welcome to Brainstorm.
We have the explicit tag for a reason.
This is a base level argument to a higher level morality.
I get paid to science?
Two science as much as one can science.
What the hell was my point?
Trigger warning. The Brainstorm podcast will criticize your most cherished beliefs. We attack nonsense in all its forms and discuss difficult subjects. If you peddle pseudoscience, supernatural woo, or religious dogma, then this is not your safe place. This is the home of hardcore skepticism.
Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast Skeptic Studio, where we do interviews, major topics, and news related to skepticism and atheism. I'm Corey, and my panel tonight are Lisa.
Hello.
Renee.
Hello.
And Leo.
Hey there.
With the always amazing Dave doing sound.
Hey.
We're here in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is September 15th, 2017. Our guest tonight is everyone's favorite atheist debater, Matt Dillahunty. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Hey, and I can actually hear myself again, which is cool.
That's perfect then, eh?
About ready to have you ship your audio guy down to my house to figure out what I'd done wrong.
Yeah.
I'm on my way.
There'll be a slight delay. No, right on. So I guess a good place to start is, we assume that most people know who you are, but in case they don't, who is Matt Dillahunty and what is your origin story?
Wow. I'm this guy who talks a lot.
Nice.
So I host the Atheist Experience TV show for the past 13 years or so. I do lectures and debates and magic shows and whatever else. I'm a former Southern Baptist who is a skeptic, a humanist, an atheist, and I don't know, kind of a lone wolf. I don't actually. I'm on the board for American Atheists, but apart from that, I'm not part of organizations. I just run around and talk a lot. You guys are not going to get to say anything tonight, I'm sure.
That's perfect.
Challenge.
Yeah.
You might actually sound intelligent.
There will be a reason to listen to the show. So how long have you been doing the debate thing?
I've been hosting a TV show for 13 and a half years, and I did my first big public debate. I have no idea. It's 7, 8, 9 years ago, maybe more. I really remember.
Starting to run together.
Debates. Every episode of the show is a whole bunch of debates, and then there's online debates and stuff. But as far as the big formal debates, I could look it up. I know who it was, and I know where it was. It was at UMBC, and it was Father Hans Jacobsy, and we debated morality, and that was the first kind of big, hey, here's a big audience at a university, and you're having a structured time debate with rules, which is very different from being able to put people on hold.
Right.
Which comes in really in the show.
Yeah, I suppose the formal back and forth, it's got its advantages and disadvantages then, eh?
I love it. I have been working to mainly change the way those formal debates are done because I didn't like I'm going to talk for 10 minutes, you're going to talk for 10 minutes, then I'm going to talk for 10 minutes, and you're going to talk for 10 minutes, and there's no interaction in that at all.
Right.
And it's, I stole a line from the West Wing when I talked about it, saying it was kind of like a joint press conference. And I've done debates where, apart from the fact that I don't have everything completely written down, we could have just written our statements and paid somebody else, better to read them. That's not what I want. I want to actually have the conversations. I like doing the live TV. I like the back and forth. And so the debates that I've been doing and the formats that I've been promoting are more like I'm going to get up for somewhere between 10 and 20, 30 minutes and give you what my position is on the issue in, broad strokes. And then my opponent's going to do the same thing or vice versa. And then we're going to have this cross-examination period. We're going to sit there, and we're going to have a certain amount of time to ask each other questions. And the time should belong to the person asking the question, so that if I'm asking someone something and they want to, head off down a rabbit trail that doesn't get anywhere near my question, then I get to interrupt them without appearing rude, because the time is mine and that's not the question I asked you. You're not going anywhere near, my. And similarly, I think if somebody misuses that, like if I ask them a question and they're giving a really good answer and I interrupt because the time is mine, I think the audiences pick up on that.
Right.
This back and forth is where you get away from the script. It's where you find out if someone can actually think. How much time have they spent thinking about this issue? Can they think on their feet? And have they thought about it enough to have an answer? Or are they just, hey, I read this blog post from somebody way smarter than me, and I, took the Cliff Notes version and made my opening statement, and now I'm going to be the world's greatest debater. Because I think debates have to be about that, that conflict back and forth.
That makes sense. I suppose I've only ever participated in one debate, and it took me like 3 days to type out my opening stuff. And then the Q&A, the back and forth, was where the real progress, I guess, was made, if you could say there was any progress made. But
yeah. And I like the audience Q&A. That way people get to ask questions that, maybe neither one of us thought of. Maybe we went to this debate with a specific plan and our anticipation of how our opponent might respond to our plan, but somebody in the audience might ask something, that neither of us really considered, which is great. It may be terrible because it may have nothing to do with what we're actually talking about. But I like having that opportunity as well. I think my ideal thing would be to have a set topic. Like the most recent debate I did a couple weeks ago was, should we have a right to die? And I think the ideal way to do this is to say, here's the topic. Should we have a right to die? And have the moderator state the topic, and then have the moderator define the terms and explain what the debate's actually about, or what the debate should be about. And then you get 2 to 5 minutes tops to say, I'm the affirmative. Yes, we should have a right to die, and here's my quick thoughts on why. And your opponent does the same. And then, not like a WWE match where you're just kind of thrown in there and you go at it, but you want the back and forth. You want the discussion. You pick one point out of that 5 minutes opening, and I'm going to attack it. And that's going to lead you. I mean, you don't have to give 30 minutes of opening statement. Almost everything that's discussed in an opening statement comes out during a good Q&A or cross-examination anyway.
Do you think that sometimes in those long opening statements that there's too much presented? Like, is it too easy to gish gallop, as it were?
It certainly can be. One of the things is that, anybody can make a statement in just a few seconds that might take hours to properly rebut. And what I found is that, even when I'm on the affirmative, like I was in this last debate, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to give my reasons why I think we should have a right to die. And if you listen to my opening statement from that, I'd say maybe half, if not slightly more, was all about preemptively rebutting any possible objections. And that's not going to work in every debate, but it does work in this particular debate, because my foundation is that we should have every right to everything until there's a good reason for us to say, no, you don't have that right anymore. And so if you're going to begin with this de facto, we should have all rights, and you need to come up with compelling reasons why we should limit those rights. If that's the foundation, as mine was, then it's really easy to go through and say, that's my foundation. Here's why it's a good thing. And now let me tell you what potential objections could be raised and why they're not sufficient. And then by the time your opponent gets up to speak, which this is pretty much what happened, he has to walk up to the podium and say, well, this is one of those slippery slopes that Matt was talking about. He's got to acknowledge that he's starting with a fallacy, which was shocking.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess, how many debates do you fit into a year?
As many as we can arrange.
Yeah.
I at this point, I do probably 2 to 3 events a month. they're not all debates. Some of them are just, me giving lectures at conferences, or we're working more and more magic shows into it as well. Debates, I would do one a week if we could find opponents. The problem is that it's very difficult to find opponents. They're great in that they're far easier to arrange than a conference, and you would think that there would be no shortage of people lining up to debate, but that's just not the case. William Lane Craig flat out refuses to debate me. James White talked trash at me on Twitter, and then when offered an opportunity to debate, he wanted to narrow the subject down to something that I didn't disagree with. And when I pointed out what my actual position was, he was like, "Oh, well, then we don't need a debate. I've got way too much stuff to do anyway." And this happens over and over again. I've had Christian churches contact me and say, "We'd like you to come debate so and so," and I'm like, "I'm more than willing. Have you talked to them?"
Right.
Then they, I either never hear from them again, or they say, "Yeah, that person wasn't willing. We're going to see if we can find somebody else." And quite often, you can't find anybody else. And I'm not saying that they all, that they went and looked me up and got scared and ran away. I'm not pulling any crap like that. I'm just saying
this is the show for that. You can do that here.
Well, I'm constantly cautioning. I get into more arguments and fights with atheists probably than I do with theists.
I think that's standard, though.
It comes with the territory. But one of the things I caution people on is don't overstate your case. Don't go into hyperbole. Don't claim we know this when what is accurate is we don't believe this, or we believe this is likely the case. And don't pretend that you can read people's minds. When somebody comes up and says, "Oh, Ray Comfort doesn't actually believe what he says he believes." Well, how the hell did you determine that? I read minds on stage for a living, or at least pretend to. And I can't tell you what Ray actually believes. You can point to instances where somebody may be lying, or you have good reason to. I usually don't even say they're lying. I'm saying that they're factually incorrect, they're mistaken, because I don't know how to demonstrate in all cases that somebody's intentionally out to deceive. So well, you could say that I'm extra cautious, but really I'm just trying to be honest and accurate in what I say. And because of that, it's been very difficult for people. There's a lot of people who despise me for reasons unknown. And they'll say, "Oh, Matt's great on all these topics, but he's terrible on this one topic." And none of them have the same topic. So I would like to get all those people in one room, and then they can all fight each other.
Yeah, hash it out what you're good and bad at.
Yeah, I keep saying I've been open, and I've been engaging as much as I can. It's good to the point now where I can't. Like, I don't pay that much attention to YouTube comments or Facebook comments. And if somebody's like, "Oh, Matt's awful," blah blah blah, I've gotten to the point where I don't pay any attention to it, because for the past few years, every time that's happened that I've been made aware of it, I go to that person and I say, "What's my position and why is it wrong?" And they never even get the first part right. Instead, they got some straw man version of my position that came from somebody else, because, "Oh, Matt uses the feminist label, and I met a feminist who thinks that all men are awful, and therefore Matt thinks all men are awful." And I was like, why don't you actually listen to what I say instead of trying to dump me in a box with whoever you don't like? But it's not worth my time to chase all those down anymore.
No, that's fair enough. I get into it a little bit still online, and I don't have nearly enough followers for it to be worth my while. So, yeah. So I guess something I've always wondered is, like, what do you think is the strongest apologetic, the most convincing?
You'd think I'd have a ready answer for this, and the truth, because it's not an uncommon question, and the truth is that I don't find any of them particularly compelling. I think that the first cause type of arguments are the ones that you can't demonstrate. They're not falsifiable,
right?
And it's not something that we have an answer for. And so anything for which we don't have an answer, when we should be saying "I don't know," I can understand the appeal of someone going for the "it's fucking magic" answer instead of "I don't know." Oh, I didn't ask. I didn't know if there was language limits on this show, but
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
okay.
Definitely no limits.
Those types of things, I understand the appeal. And I also understand the appeal of the sort of emotional arguments, the ones that aren't, a classical structured argument for the existence of God. But I know plenty of people who believe just because they find it comforting. The thing that they find comforting, I wouldn't actually find that all that comforting, that there was somebody up in the sky spying on my every move who had my life planned out and blah, blah, blah. But I think that the fear of not having people care about you, the fear of not knowing what happens after you die, and this fallacy that a lot of people get caught up in, which is, oh, I've got to make a decision. I can't say I don't know. I need to actually pick. I have to pick. And this is what Christianity plays on, with not so much as you have to make a choice right now, but if you were to die tonight, do you know where you would spend eternity, which essentially becomes the same thing. You've got to make this decision. You've got to make it now.
Right.
I don't think the arguments are good. I think that the rhetoric and the attempts to ease people's fears, I see why they can be compelling.
Have you ever had your mind changed in a debate?
Sure. Actually, I think it was John Ferrer pointed out that something I'd said in a debate was fallacious. And as a matter of fact, I remember the basics of what it was when we were talking about objective morality versus subjective morality. And we were talking about the problem of you can't derive an ought from an is. And I had what I thought was a pretty clever way around that. And John pointed out that it was fallacious during the debate, and I acknowledged it during the debate, and I acknowledged it again afterwards, because during the debate I basically said something like, I think you're right. I'm going to have to think about that further. And by the time the debate was over, I just immediately acknowledged, what I said was fallacious. That was a mistake.
Interesting.
I'm curious what it was.
I think it has to do with oral sex, right? Like that's what he keeps saying. Fallacious.
Yeah.
Fallacious.
We
Sorry.
definitely should have recorded the video.
I had to say it. I'm sorry. It's what I'm here for.
You're there for fallacious?
I'm here to make dirty jokes that are totally
you're off to the
inappropriate.
side where I can't see you anyway. So
You
all
can see
I
my fingers twiddling.
I do. I see your fingers.
It's my
twiddling.
knitting.
Oh my gosh. So my wife knits. My wife knits, and I have a bunch of crafts. I crochet, whatever, although I don't do it as often as I should because I just don't have time. We had this long discussion once about whether or not it was rude for her to crochet at conventions while speakers were talking.
No.
And I was on the wrong side of that one, too.
That was a fallacious argument. That did not result in fellatio.
Definitely not.
Sorry, I'm done. Go ahead, Corey. Clean it up.
Welcome to the brainstorm.
Trying to get that back
We're
on
classy.
track.
We're classy humans.
Well, so you recently went to the Ark the Ark thing. Did you get to see Ken Ham?
No, and I actually went up to the desk to ask if there was anybody who'd get in touch with him. I wanted to let him know that we were there. He and I have never met, although I'm pretty sure he knows who I am. Not positive, but I'm pretty sure. And when we got to the end, I had asked, I told the guys there that we were a bunch of atheists and that Ken Ham had expressed an interest in debating me and others. And, was there any way to contact him? And the guys were like, no. And I said, there's not a phone number to like the main office or anything where we could call a secretary to let him know we're here, just if you wanted to say hi. No. Oh, okay. The guy says, not even by email. And I'm like, does this son of a bitch even exist? You're telling me you guys work for him at his Ark encounter and not even your boss has email access to Ken Ham? Are you kidding me? I'm not that hard to get a hold of. Hell, my email address is out there where anybody could. I won't answer it, because I am.
Right.
Well, I have 11,440 unread emails at this particular moment. And I do try and answer a lot of them. But it's funny that, no, we couldn't possibly get a hold of him. No.
he doesn't exist outside of this particular spot.
He's got a book and he's got a boat, and neither of them will hold their serve their intended purpose, because his boat's not going to float. It's actually
no.
Seth was pointing out the whole backside of this is pretty much a building, so it's like 3/4 of an arc.
Right.
There's a building with 3/4 of an arc like crazy glued onto it.
Isn't that like a sign of illegitimacy, or like a human? You know, like he's putting himself on this pedestal just so that his follower. I don't know, like kind of like Kim Jong-il style. You know what I mean? Like sort of. Do you know what I mean? He's like God. You can't.
I'm not so sure. So it may be, I wouldn't expect, like, if I walked into Best Buy, that anybody there would be able to reach out and talk to the CEO. Although they could probably find a pathway to get a message, if like a friend of the CEO came in. But I'm not Ken Spratt. I'm just. It's kind of weird. Well, everything about it is weird. Everything about the Ark Encounter, the Creation Museum, all of it is weird. And
yes.
That debate that he did with Bill Nye, I was opposed to that because he wins no matter what.
Yeah, that's right.
If the public perception is that he beat Bill Nye, which it wasn't, not even among believers, but if that was the public perception, he gets to go say, hey, we're winning, so we're doing good with your money, so you need to give us more money. And then that'll help us get the Ark Park done. And if he gets his ass kicked, which is what actually happened, then he gets to go back to his investors and say, the evolutionists are winning. We need more money so we can get this Ark Park done and teach people about how Genesis is, real history is. So it was a win-win situation for him, and it kept his missions afloat. Yeah, I'll go. I love puns. I'll go for the easy jokes.
That was good.
I get older. The dad jokes get funnier.
Wasn't there like a meme that went around about that where he was? I can't remember what Ken Ham was bitching about, but the meme was, the answer was like, "Didn't you spend millions of dollars on a boat that can't float?" Like, I mean, like the entire thing is ridiculous. Like, they spent. I can't remember. Do you know what the how much the Ark cost? Like, it was in the hundreds of millions, wasn't it?
I think Seth Andrews called it $100 million paperweight.
Nice.
But I don't know the numbers.
Yeah, I know he's been having some tax issues the last while too, but I don't know the numbers and how it played out.
There's something really shady going on with that too, but the whole thing is shady.
I haven't actually kept up with it because it's just a travesty start to finish, and I hope this pretty much takes away any special tax incentives they had. I know Seth put up a video, it's about 8 minutes long or so, talking, giving his thoughts on it and laughing and mocking.
Yeah.
But he and I also recorded a hangout where we talked about our own impressions of it, and I think he's going to post that maybe next week. So anybody who wants to hear our thoughts on the Ark Encounter can stop listening to this podcast and go listen.
Yeah.
Turn this shit off right away. What the fuck are you doing?
What is wrong with you people?
Although I doubt Seth's going to talk about fallacious.
Plus, we're free.
Free is good.
Yeah.
Free is good.
So's the other one.
Fuck.
Nice attempt, but
yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Speaking of giant useless paperweights, Joel Osteen, the whole thing with him not opening the church, what was going on there? Like
I have no. Yeah. During the hurricane or hurricanes, I live in Austin, so we caught the northern end of the storm, and we basically hunkered down for a few days. It was not that bad. I have a inflatable hot tub on the back porch, and we spent a good chunk of the hurricane just sitting out in the hot tub while it was raining, trying to keep our spirits up and not be bored. I heard bits and pieces of the story about Joel's fiasco with his church, and he was saying, hey, we would have I think I probably shouldn't talk about this at all because I don't have good information. I have bits and pieces of stuff.
Right.
But the bits and pieces that I were given was that he said, we're not going to open the church because it's essentially flooded. And then it came out the church isn't flooded. And he revises to point out that, it's not the church that flooded. It's access to the church that flooded. The roads around there were impassable. And, we didn't. I don't know. But my thing is, if I have a building and it's not flooded and there's a hurricane, the doors are open.
Yeah.
And you can come in and seek shelter. And it'd be the one time that stadium, which used to be a basketball stadium anyway, where the best seats in the house are the ones at the top. Oh, apart from every Sunday when he's preaching, because if you're way up there and way back in the back, you can just sleep through that crap.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because that can hold, I can't remember where I saw that, but it's like 17,000 people or something can get into that.
It's a lot of people.
Huge.
Yeah.
When the Texas Free Thought Convention was in Houston, the last one that Hitchens was at before he died. And also, that was a summer where there was a drought where then Governor Rick Perry invited everybody to come pray for rain, and they prayed for rain all freaking summer, and there was no rain. And all the atheists get together in Houston for an atheist conference, and that's when it started raining. And Aaron Ra and myself and Thunderfoot, they wanted to go to Joel Osteen's church and see it. And I was like, okay, let's go. And this is a good opportunity to both to pick on both of them, as I have every time I tell this story. Neither of them have any background in Christianity and religion, along those lines. I mean, Aaron was a Mormon and then became a pagan and then just believed whatever weird shit came along until he finally wised up. And I don't know much about Phil's background. I don't think he was ever religious, but their plan, we all jumped into this thing. We're driving over the church, and they've got little camcorders, and they're going to sneak their camcorders in underneath their jacket. This is going to be like an undercover journalism thing. And they're explaining this to me as we're driving over there, and I was like, you don't have to do that, right? I mean, the church is open to the public. They are going to be happily give you a tour and let you film all of it, whether you walk. Yeah. You can walk into that church and say, hi, I'm the host of the Atheist Experience TV show, and I'm going to walk around and film in your church. Would you like to give me a tour? And they will say yes. And Aaron and Thunderfoot were dumbfounded. Like, what? You mean yes. And it's an interesting story for me, because there are a lot of misperceptions about religions and religionists from people who weren't ever really all that involved in it. And, it goes for everything from just saying, oh, they're stupid, or, none of that's true. And there's this view of them as the enemy, so they're nefarious. The overwhelming majority of believers are just good people who got sucked into a lie like most everybody else. And so we showed up at the church, walked right in, through the doors. There's a welcome desk. One of them was brave enough, I think, to just hold their camera in their hand instead of trying to hide it under the coat. And then this woman went and gave us a tour and everything else. And we were taking pictures, we're videoing. I think it was a little eye-opening for them that, it's not like you're sneaking into the Skull and Bones secret butt sex party or something.
Yeah, that's true.
This is just and actually Joel Osteen, my mom doesn't even consider him Christian. He doesn't really preach about the Bible or Jesus or any of that. He's like a motivational speaker. It's a lot of power, positive thinking, and prosperity gospel crap.
With a little bit of Jesus thrown in, hey?
Yeah, he's as big as he is because he doesn't actually stick to any sort of strong doctrine. It's all upbeat, positive stuff, and Jesus is going to help you out. Maybe not in a literal sense, but
yeah, that's right.
Not like he's going to cure your diseases or anything. But if you stay positive and keep praying, good things are going to happen to you. Buy my books.
Yep.
I just got a notice that I'm supposed to be on a podcast at 9:30.
Well, there you go. It's a little late, though, isn't it?
I'm trying to figure out why it's giving me this notice 30 minutes after start.
I don't know. Some of those are just goofy. They'll show up, like you'll program them, and then they'll give you the notice like half an hour after you're already at the thing.
Yeah, it's weird.
Oh, no, it thinks it's 30 minutes early because I put The title that I put on my calendar for today was 9:30 p.m. Brainstorm Podcast, and then I set it for 10:30 p.m.
Oh, there you go.
Human error.
There we go.
It's not the machine's fault.
For once.
No, computers only do what you tell them to do, man.
Wait a minute. Have the clocks gone back already?
No, not yet.
We don't know.
We don't actually change our
Yeah,
clocks. So.
We're in Saskatchewan. We don't do that.
It's for the cows or some shit. Who the fuck knows?
I don't know. You guys booked this.
Yes.
I don't know how many months ago it was. You're like, we have a slot open in September. This has to be the most popular podcast ever.
No, Corey's just
had-
that organized.
We'd like to have Matt on, but you will need to wait 9.5 months.
It's true.
Really, he just lied just to make it look that important.
Yeah, I book every 6 months. I book the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Ish.
That's outstanding. I wish, if I hadn't recently got somebody to book all my stuff, I'd probably hire you.
It'd be a good job.
No, and I guess, man, I'm never comfortable with asking for money or being self-promotional. But now that I have somebody scheduling all my stuff for me, he'd probably be mad if I didn't mention some things that are actually coming up that people can attend. The end of the month, I'm at the Mythicist Milwaukee convention for part of it. When the debate's over, I hop on a plane and go to London, where Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and I are starting the very first event in the Celebration of Science and Reason tour. So that's October 1st in London with me, Richard, and Sam. And then November 2nd in Vancouver, it's also me, Richard, and Sam. The very next night, it's me and Tracy Harris and Sarah Hayter discussing leaving religion, also in Vancouver. And then November 5th in Toronto, it's me and Richard, just the two of us. And that's it. The rest of it, you can go to mattdillahunty.com and click on events, and the calendar's up there. And now I've done my due diligence so that I'm actually promoting the stuff that he's bothered to book.
I can probably do some links in our show notes and stuff too.
Everyone will care.
Travis will love you for doing the things that I don't want to do. It's been great. The last, I feels weird saying, I have an agent or manager or promoter or whatever. We're not even quite sure what the nature of the relationship is. Calendar buddies, I don't know. But it was great because I did this event with Dawkins, and I had some potential misgivings about it because I've been kind of in this lone wolf mode where I don't endorse people, I don't endorse organizations, I endorse actions. And there's so much bickering and infighting of, so-and-so is awful, so-and-so is terrible, how can you be friends with them, how can you work with them, blah, blah, blah. And it applies to everybody. I mean, you can't throw out hardly any. And some of them, they're right. There are some terrible people that I wouldn't want to work with. And I was worried that this was going to kind of affect my focus and mission, because I don't ever want to be in the, Matt now is charging $50,000 to come speak, and blah, 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 because, it's pretentious crap. And
you would have to develop a British accent to do that, by the way.
I've done that, actually.
Yeah.
When I was working for Dell, I was in Stoke-on-Trent outside of Manchester, and I was there for 2 weeks, and I came back with an accent because I'm either a chameleon or something. I don't know.
You're impressionable.
Or I just desperately want to fit in, and I will
do whatever it takes to be liked.
Yeah,
good job being an atheist in Texas.
That's me going with the crowd again.
Yeah.
But it worked out great. I did the event with Dawkins and one with Krauss in Toronto. And then, part of it was, let's continue to raise my brand and use that to raise the brands of other people who I think should be listened to more, which is how this event with Sarah Hayter and Tracy Harris came about. It's also how I'm going to be doing events with Callie Wright and a bunch of other friends and good thinkers who I get along with. We're going to do events. We're going to cover a lot of topics, and there'll be a lot of magic shows in between. I was lucky. James Randi came up, and we did an hour-long discussion, and he did some magic. And then when he was done, he went out to the audience, and myself and Murray Hatfield and Sean Farquhar, the two-time world champion of magic. I think I'm contractually obligated to say that. we did a three-man show, which was great. I mean, you can't work with some of the top professionals and not end up with a great show, even if I might have sucked. I didn't suck, but I might have. But we're doing some more of that, and I talked to Randy when we were at the American Atheist Convention, and assuming he survived the hurricanes in Florida, I'm planning on a trip down there to visit him to see if we can do some more magic and skepticism events together in the near future. But anyway, enough about me and all the cool shit I'm doing.
Well, no, that's kind of what we have you here for.
No, I want to ask. Okay, what's Dawkins like in real life? Did you like hang out with him, or is he like give us the dirt, please?
Yes, I'm going to dish out the dirt. Richard and I, we've known each other for years. Although I think I had to meet him in person and have 4 conversations with him before he had any clue who I was. And it's because, and I understand it, because I have the same problem. When you're running around. I woke up from a nightmare one night where it was just face after face kind of zooming in from left and right, talking about going, hey, Matt, hey, Matt, hey, Matt, hey, Matt. And don't get me wrong, I love doing the events and I love meeting people and finding out, how to be better at helping people find their way out of religion and stuff. I'm not going to dish any dirt on anyone because I don't actually know him. But what I will say is that he's understandably hard to get to know. When you have that many people vying for your time, it's a little guarded. And it probably wasn't until halfway through that stage event. I mean, we were probably halfway through the Vancouver event that we really started to kind of develop a back and forth rapport. And I don't agree with him on everything. I don't agree with anybody on everything. I've spent like 2 minutes with Sam Harris. I'm going to be doing 4 or 5 events with him over the next few months.
So
and
jealous.
I have no idea how it's going to go. We might end up really liking each other. I'm hoping that we can have some good conversations. I'm hoping that we can change each other's minds on something, or it could be terrible. It could be awful. You never know.
Yeah, that's right. You never actually know what people are like.
No.
In close quarters.
Sam Harris is amazing. Okay. We love each other. He doesn't know me, but that doesn't matter. Okay. Whatever.
He's been a little careless in how he dealt with some issues, and I'm hoping to address those. But
like what? I want to know.
Race and IQ.
That one was not a good one.
I don't want to say anything specific about it because I need to go back and research it, and also I'm not going to.
Yeah, no, that's.
I want to have a conversation with Sam. And I don't think, unlike some people, like when we announced the event, somebody was like, oh, it's a shame that you have to go sit on stage with 2 racists and bigots. And I was like, but 2 comments down from that, somebody was like, it's a shame that Dawkins and Harris have to sit on stage with that SJW cuck. I was like,
you
hooray.
Can't win, eh?
It's all good. It's I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, and I'm happy having conversations. I'm happy. I like making people think. I like thinking. I like finding out that I was wrong so I don't have to continue being wrong. And I like helping other people do the same thing. There are some people who I can't work with. I've just found out through interactions that they may be good people or they may be terrible people, but nothing good can come from our interactions. I don't know if that's the case yet, and I won't until we've done some events. But
I think he's talking about you, Corey.
Yeah.
Such a jerk.
I am developing a bit of a reputation that way.
Well, I notice you are sitting at the head of the table with kind of, surrounding you.
Yeah, that's right.
He's our leader. He does all the work, so he can sit there. Like, that's fine.
And he also has his chair a little elevated so that he's taller than all of us.
Yeah, he's special.
That's right.
Put some chips under the...
That's because I'm the boss.
Yeah. He is. Yeah, no, really.
I support you, boss.
He's saving up for an Iron Throne.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be a long time coming.
Yeah. You fucking earned the Iron Throne. What the hell? Kill someone already.
Yeah, jeez.
But we've seen what happens to people who sit on the Iron Throne a little bit too long.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's not a comfortable seat.
No.
So I guess
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/Brainstorm Podcast Gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
We are given one life, full of billions of small and large decisions. To be somebody, to change, to be kind, to give hope, to become a better person, and to leave a lasting impact on this planet. It is a decision to be made every single day while your heart is still beating. We've made our decision. Absence of clothing. Atheist and science-based apparel and merchandise, donating 50% of our profits to charity. Look good and feel good, without God. Check us out at absenceofclothing.com and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest for discount codes and other sweet swag.
use the code BRAINSTORM at absenceofclothing.com and get 10% off. The Hardcore Skeptic Examines is a bi-monthly documentary-style podcast that includes interviews, research, and commentary from your host, Corey Johnston. That's me. As the host of the Brainstorm podcast, I've spent the last 3+ years trying to spread critical thinking and skepticism while having fun. This project is intended to look at some of those same topics covered by Brainstorm, but a bit deeper. With the long intervals between episodes and the long format, I'm hoping to provide good information that educates as well as entertains. Check out my Patreon for more details at www.patreon.com/hardcoreskeptic or follow my Twitter at hardcoreskeptic.
Have you heard the Habeas Humor podcast? It's a new legal show with lots of thoughtful analysis.
That must have been like a desert fart of dry excitement.
Famous politicians, or at least people who went to school with them.
And then she says, have you met Barack Obama? And I'm asking, who the heck is Shakalama?
And legal tips. You can still be rapey if your dick doesn't work, the more you know. Disney can't sue me if I don't sing it. HABEASHUMOR.
Just randomly, what do you think your president?
Oh, that's right. You guys are in Canada.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. In Regina.
You can say it.
I've been there. I did a debate there. I think I met some of you there.
Yep.
I think probably
At our conference.
Oh, cool. I missed it, but awesome.
I think my opponent's name is John Morrison, maybe? I don't know. He actually sent me an email when he found out I was coming to Vancouver to see if we could arrange another debate. And I'm like, you need to talk to Travis, this is the nice thing about having somebody manage my schedule. Is I don't ever have to say no or yes or anything. It's like, go talk to them and they will work it out.
My people will talk to your people?
Yeah. It's not, I don't want to, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing to be able to do that. I don't necessarily want to. I wouldn't mind debating John again if we could find a topic. And he was talking about possibly the resurrection. But that time frame is just too tight. It's like, we fly in, we've got an evening, then we do 2 events in Vancouver, and then we hop on a plane and I do one in Toronto.
Right.
I don't know where we could fit a debate in. But
There's no time to land somewhere, do a debate, and fly back out.
Got 4-hour layover in Edmonton.
I'm not opposed to it. We could maybe film it in the airport.
Right.
But I kind of screwed up because I was in Vancouver with Dawkins, and it was like 2 days before the election. And I said live on stage, don't worry, there's no way in hell Trump can win.
Oh, geez.
And then I came back to Vancouver after the election to do a magic and mind reading show, which involved making predictions. So I got to use that failed prediction as a joke at the beginning of the act. And then when I missed a prediction later on, I had already said, I get the big ones wrong. And this one was the big one at the end of this one segment. And, of course, I got it wrong and used that as a callback to the
there you
first.
Go.
Trump is the least qualified, least intelligent, least knowledgeable, least presidential, least human individual who's ever run for president that I'm aware of, and certainly who has ever won. He is despicable and disgusting and vile, and it's, you know, I'm pretty sure my mom voted for him thinking he's going to usher in the apocalypse, and I'm sitting here thinking, if I had said half of the things, even two of the things that are on Trump's top 10 most disgusting list, you would disown me.
Yeah.
And yet you're voting for the pussy grabber in chief who mocks disabled reporters and wants to kick out, you know, all the Mexicans and wants to never let any of the Muslims in. And it's just awful. I have legitimately watched more hours of news footage in the past year than I have in the past 3 years prior to that combined. There's been a lot of thinking and concern about how we got here.
Right.
Because this is something, you know, I was clearly very, very, very wrong. Now, granted, he didn't win the popular vote, so we can talk about how screwed up the electoral college is. But at the end of the day, none of that helps anyone. Right. And I think the reason that he's president, and there are many, and I talked to some people who are friends of mine who voted for him. And we touched a little bit on various problems in the secular community. They're not limited to the secular community. The whole world has lost sight of nuance, is on edge and eager to draw lines. And so there's a friend of mine who he got tired of being called a racist.
Okay.
He's not a racist under his view of races. Here's the thing. I didn't mean to go down the racist rabbit hole, but I'll do this in a nutshell and make it quick and easy.
No, that's fine.
There's more than one usage for the term racist racism. There's a difference between explicit racism and implicit racism. And not everybody's aware of that. Explicit racism being, you know, hey, we're going to burn a cross in your yard and seek to kill black people. And implicit racism is when we institute policies that disproportionately affect minorities. In addition to the distinction between explicit and implicit racism, there's another distinction where there's racism that you're consciously aware that you are a bigot, which goes hand in hand with the explicit racism.
Right.
And the one where you might not be aware of whether or not your actions are racist. And then there's two definitions where racism is just bigotry based on race. But the new kind of sociological usage, which is particularly popular on the left, is racism is prejudice plus power. And they use this to say that, you know, African Americans can't be racist because they're not in a position of power, which is nonsense because some of them are, but clearly not that many of them. There's huge problems. The bigger issue is I can talk about racism with anybody, provided we set up what we mean by racism first. But that's not what happened. Instead, the people who were supporting Trump for reason X or opposed to Hillary for reason X, which seems to be much more likely in some cases, got called racist. And what was intended by that accusation was you are supporting policies that disproportionately affect minorities. And the people who were being called racist had no understanding of that particular definition. So they when they hear you're a racist, they hear you hate black people and burn crosses.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough of the conversation to explain this is what I mean versus this is what you mean. So they were talking past each other. And some of them just got fed up and said, if my support for this individual or my opposition to somebody else is enough for this group of people to call me racist, and I don't understand what they mean by it, so I only have my own understanding, I know those people are wrong. and those people are therefore irrational and reactionary. And that means whatever candidate they're supporting, I shouldn't support. So the people who voted for Trump because they hated Hillary, because they heard bits and pieces of stuff. The other aspect of this is that Facebook and everybody else are feeding you the things that you already like and agree to. So the people only watching Fox News and only getting Fox News style stuff in their feed. And then there's people who are only watching MSNBC and only getting that side of stuff in their feed. They are forced to talk past each other because they're not even getting the same access to the same information.
Yeah.
When I look at it, I was like, wow, look at all the stuff he said and all he's done and how he clearly doesn't know or understand anything. He's not listening to generals. He reminds me of the former head of the Texas State Board of Education who said somebody needs to stand up to these experts and then got laughed.
Right.
So there's a lot of factors. There's the reactionary factors. We're all getting different informations from our feed, and the stuff that makes me go, wow, there's no way that guy could ever get elected. Most of that, the people who voted for him, it's not so much that they didn't care about it. I'm not even convinced they were aware of it because all they were getting was lock her up, Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi.
Right.
And I pretty much forced myself to watch multiple news networks all the time just so I can see what's going on. Just so I know that I'm not living in an echo chamber. And so I know what the people who disagree with me are hearing, so I know better how to potentially counter it. I'm not going to fix the world or make sure the next president is like, Obama Part 2, the electric boogaloo. Oh, that's probably racist. Shit. But it's been interesting and sad for me to kind of gradually figure out as many. There's more facets to this than I'm ever going to figure out.
Right.
But to get those pieces and to see how those pieces had affected me as well, the only way I could do that was by actually talking with people who disagreed with me, who were called science deniers and racists. And in the course of those conversations, what I find is as they are exposed to more information, they are ever more regretful of the decision that they made. If somebody can just get up and lie and say fake news and alternative facts, and your perception of the liberals is that they're a bunch of liars.
Yeah.
Then you just go with the bombastic jackass.
So do you know anybody that you respect who still supports Trump? Not somebody who only voted for Trump and would do it again because they hated Hillary Clinton so much, but somebody who actually thinks, yeah, this is the guy I want. Do you know anyone you respect? Because I don't know anybody. I mean, I live in Canada, but even like American thinkers and intellectuals, I don't, like people on the left, people on the right, I don't know of anybody I respect who makes a good argument for Trump.
So I'm usually cautious in talking about whether I respect someone because I respect aspects of people. I don't think there's any one label or one bucket I can put people into. Certainly there are some things where you just draw the line, and I don't care if we agree on 99% of stuff. If you're, trying to support NAMBLA, we're fucking done.
Right.
If you want to support, genocide and blah, 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 and you're church-state separation and, go secularists and let's kill everybody, this is never going to happen. There are people who I respect in certain categories who I have no respect for in others. And I find them to be, grossly irrational in this area and not so much in other areas because they've compartmentalized it. I don't know that I know anybody personally who supported Trump and still supports Trump who I also happen to generally respect.
Yeah, or even like a public intellectual, something you don't know personally, but I don't know, a politician, a news reporter, I don't know.
Probably not. There's probably something, I can find something about almost anybody that I admire or respect. I love some of James Woods' acting, but he's a right-wing date rapey piece of crap.
Yeah, apparently not cool at all.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Maybe have you heard any arguments in favor of Trump as he is now that are in any way persuasive?
No, as a matter of fact, the only arguments I hear are the Bernie Bros who were Bernie or bust. and people who were never going to vote for Hillary no matter what. I mean, if religions were true and Satan himself had been running against Hillary, they would have voted for Satan.
Yeah.
There was several things about her that a group of people opposed so strongly that it didn't matter who was running.
I mean, that's all water under the bridge now. She's done. She's gone. She's never running again. I'm talking about the Trump we have now.
I wish she was done and never running again. I liked her. I voted for her. When I say that, I'm not just jumping in with a bunch of people who are like, oh my gosh, just sit down and shut up. You've had your run. I wish. So she just came out with her book, which is why people are doing this. Sit down and shut up. You've had your turn. You lost. Move on. Let's see if we can fix this another way. That's not my position at all. It's I don't see that what she's actually doing is productive. I don't see that this mix of here's what went wrong. I don't see that as being as beneficial as here's what we need to do to fix this, which is the thing that I would have wanted to see from her. I don't think she's going to run again. And, hey, she can keep making money off books or whatever. But what I want to see is for the Democratic Party to stop being idiots and say, okay, there's a lot of speculation about what went wrong. Set all the speculation aside and let's come up with a plan that defines who we are and what we're going to do and how we will strategically engage with opposition to who we are and what we're going to do. They're kind of in this let's find the next liberal messiah to be a champion of the Democratic Party. And
I mean, it doesn't seem like you need someone that great, just better than Hillary Clinton, who really did have a lot of flaws politically and
a cult of personality, which I loved Obama, but it was also a cult of personality.
Yeah.
He was an affable guy.
Yeah.
Like anybody, I mean, really, Hillary Clinton was just so despised. Like, just choose somebody maybe who's not despised. Like, maybe you don't need but Obama. You may just get somebody that people don't fucking hate. Like, I don't know.
Well, I voted for Bernie in the primary, and when I did it, I announced on Facebook, I was like, hey, I voted for Bernie today in the primary, but I don't expect that I'll be voting for him in the general. And people were like, why not? Why not? Why wouldn't you have? And I was like, wow, I thought this was clear because I don't think he's going to win to become the nominee in the general election. If he is, I will vote for him. But I'm just saying I voted for him despite the fact that I don't think he's going to be the nominee.
Geez, why are you switching to Republican for the general?
Gotta mix it up.
There are, I'm not uber left. Super. There are issues where I part company with a lot of my liberal progressive friends, not too much and not on big issues, but there could be theoretically, hypothetically, a Republican candidate that I might vote for.
In a different world.
It's incredibly unlikely, and I get, there's like a poop smell in the room just saying that. Yeah. But the core behind it is I look at people's positions and do kind of a cost-benefit analysis, and this person is enough in line with me. And it's possible for somebody in much the same way that like Joe Manchin, who's a Democratic senator from West Virginia, I think he's a senator, who's a Republican. He's got a D after his name, but he sides with the Republicans. He's a monumental just piece of crap. You couldn't pay me to vote for Joe Manchin. I don't care if he's got a D after his name. And there's some folks with an R after their name who I find preferable to him. But I'm not the guy who's going to figure out how to solve this. I'm unelectable. I don't plan to run. I'm optimistic that. Well, here's the thing that's terrifying. Not that there aren't 50 things that care, like how Trump talks about Korea and everything else. But I don't think Trump himself colluded with the Russians. Somebody else may or may not have. We'll find out when we get more evidence. But I don't think he did, because I don't think he's smart enough to. He doesn't know how to keep a secret. He doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut, despite being the guy who supposedly can close a deal. I don't find him to be very good at bargaining or dealing or anything along those lines. I find him to be someone who seems to go with what the last thing he heard was. And I think he's someone who's been manipulated by people he trusts within his inner circle. Somebody comes to him and says, hey, if you buy this property, you can double your money. He buys the property, doubles his money. And now all of a sudden that person has told him something true and made him some money. So that person is now trustworthy on other issues. And I think this manipulation, not only is it incredibly dangerous, but it could turn out to make him look good. And there's a ton of examples, but I'm just going to go with DACA.
Right.
And the Dreamers Act thing. He has contradicted himself about what he wants to do with it and what he doesn't want. So he's this wishy-washy, I'm going to say this to this crowd, I'm going to say this to this crowd and everything else. But he gets Jeff Sessions out there to say, Obama didn't get this done, and so he did it illegally, despite the fact that there have been legal challenges and it stood up. So he's going to shut it down. And then it was funny because like the day before he did it, Paul Ryan was sitting there saying, I don't think the president should end DACA. And then the president ends DACA. And Paul Ryan says, the president did the right thing, because Paul Ryan is useless, absolutely useless. It's all right. No wonder Congress can't get anything done, even with majority.
Well, he's turned out to be spineless, right? When it comes to Trump, completely spineless.
He's going to make the joke that he had his spine surgically removed, but
yeah,
it hasn't been proven. But
well, I think Bannon was going to do that so he could suck his own dick.
Yeah. That is some hot fellatio right there.
Yeah.
All the way back around.
At the end of this, Congress could finally pass immigration reform that supports the DREAM Act. And in history, what happened? The president said, and you can cherry pick out because he said both things. The president had his attorney general put a timeline into this and said Congress needs to fix this. And he told Congress, you guys need to fix this for the people type thing. He made us that sounded almost like I really want this to just be legal now. And if Congress does it, then with a little selective cherry picking of his comments, he can look like the guy who made the world better for immigrants. The same jackass who wants to build a wall and ban Muslims could, in hindsight, turn out to look like the guy who made things better for immigrants. And it has nothing to do. It's not like he planned this.
No.
He has risen just above the level of his incompetence, or actually miles above the level of his incompetence. But he's surrounded by some people who are really good at manipulating things.
So Douglas Adams makes the argument, the creator of Dilbert.
Scott Adams.
Scott Adams. Yeah, Scott. Oh, sorry. Douglas Adams, the guy who wrote Hitchhikers.
Yeah,
sorry, wrong Adams.
One of those
Scott
guys
Adams. But his argument is that that Trump knows what he's doing. He's a master manipulator. He makes an argument or says he's going to do something to an extreme, brings people on board, and then ends up somewhere in the middle. He ends up achieving something no one else could. So he goes extreme on DACA and then gets pulled back to something better because he's just that smart. That's what he thinks.
Well, that's in his book. Like he wrote,
it's retarded, but
he wrote that down in his book that's the way you negotiate the art of the deal. You go.
Oh, that's what
way,
Trump's book.
Yeah, Trump's book. Yeah,
he didn't write that.
To be fair, Trump did not write his book.
Yeah, but in his
Scott
book,
Adams.
Yeah.
No, the ghostwriter who wrote his book wrote a wonderful article in New Yorker before the election about how much he despises Trump and how much he regrets ghostwriting Art of the Deal. But anyways, yeah.
Well, I don't. Scott Adams is bizarre. Every time I read something from him, I don't think he's any more in touch with reality than
Out
Trump
to lunch.
is. But the guy is Trump is. He's listening to Alex Jones and other conspiracy theorist crap. You don't have to. You don't even have to know what Dunning-Kruger is to know that we've elected the Dunning-Kruger president.
Right, yeah.
He's there's no way this is a brilliant strategy that he's enacting. Every time he opens his mouth, it's either self-promotional crap, like he's still running campaigns.
Yeah.
It's
doing rallies and stuff.
And it's let me make sure I don't give you anything specific. You're really going to like it. You're going to like it. It's going to be huge. It's going to be big. It's going to be awesome. We're going to fix it. Nobody else can fix it but me. I'm the fixer. I'm the fixer. I'm the decider. I'm the debater. I'm the champion of deals. Roar, vote for me. Oh, thank you. You love me. And now I'm going to make other people do some work, and I'm going to stand in the way of stuff, and I'm going to make it. Oh, no. Wait, what was that? Was that a shiny thing over in the corner over there?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's no way. If I don't know how brilliant it would have to be to actually look this incompetent and still actually be brilliant. I mean, I think we have reasonable evidence from everything he's ever said in public, even for the many years before he even decided to run, that he's not brilliant.
Yeah.
I would say the 6 bankruptcies would prove he's not brilliant.
I feel like people from across the political spectrum, people from a variety of different perspectives, so many smart people out there, I don't know of any of them who support Trump. You know what I mean? Support Trump. It goes all the way from, I don't know, who's the most left-wing person you can think of? I don't know. Go as left as you can go. I don't know.
What kind of
whatever? Go
kind of left
from the college campus snowflakes to David Frum. Nobody fucking support. Nobody with any. Nobody makes a good argument.
I take offense to that snowflake comment.
Sorry, I triggered you. It's not nice.
Hurt him in the feels.
Snowflake.
So I guess. Go ahead.
Actually, do you know Sad Gad?
Gad Sad?
Gad Sad. That's the guy. By any chance, Concordia University professor.
I've heard the name, but so here's something, and I'm going to keep this really short because you guys have more questions and I've been talking a lot. People assume that because I'm a known figure in the atheist community, that I'm also familiar with and aware of anyone and anything and everything that they've done. So it's like I'm going to this convention at the end of the month, and there's a whole bunch of people who are pissed off because armored skeptic, shoe on head, and
Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah. And I'd never heard of the first two at all. I've never watched a second of any of their videos. And I'd only seen like one or two things from Sargon before I realized, we don't agree, and his content's of no use to me, so I just moved on.
Yeah.
And so I've heard of Gad Sad, but it's one of those things where I know they do like Dave Rubin's show once or something. I think somebody sent me links, but I don't listen to podcasts. I don't read blogs. I don't watch YouTube stuff. I mean, I listen to the Brainstorm podcast.
That's right.
When I'm on it.
Now you're just being patronizing.
So what was the deal with Gad Sad, and what did you want to ask?
Oh, no, I was just wondering if you're familiar with the guy. He's coming to the university here in Regina, and it's pissing off some of the snowflakes.
Okay. I don't like Gad Sad. I think every time I've heard him speak, I'm just like, you're just wrong. I don't agree with him. However, why would you not want to, he can have a debate on a university campus. Why not?
Well, it's not a debate.
Well, he can have a speech. I don't give a fuck. Whatever.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I was just wondering if there's any people with opinions.
Yeah, I don't have any specific opinions about him because I'm not familiar with his positions or his work or anything else. I will say that not to, the people who get labeled as snowflakes, I think that a lot of those terms are just completely overused, and there's a ton of confusion about the terms and who they apply to and what the actual complaints are, because there's legitimate reasons to not necessarily want a particular person to speak on campus.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Where is that line?
I'm generally opposed to what gets labeled, I think, as no platforming. And I can only talk about free speech issues as it pertains to the United States and not, Canada or the UK. Actually, I can talk about from the UK. Their free speech laws are shit, where you're going to actually criminalize causing offense. I'm actually can't wait till I get over to London so I can see if I end up in a lawsuit for causing offense. The thing is with universities, so this isn't about free speech. Free speech is about what the government can do about you saying stuff. So it's about speech in public. And free speech, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I'm not of the view that all speech is protected. We've already settled this in the U.S. on some laws. There are specific restrictions. Jerry Coyne just wrote a good blog post the other day about this. A university, the same freedoms that allow GADSAT or Milo Yiannopoulos or whoever to speak at a university, allow me to speak at a university, allow anybody else to speak there as well. And so the university they have an obligation, if they're going to allow some student groups to invite speakers, to make sure that they are affording that right to other student groups as well. And they do get to, private universities do get to set standards. It's not like we're going to have a KKK rally in the gymnasium, but there's limitations on that. And the thing that some people overlook, and this is where they get into saying, oh, the snowflakes are all upset. Well, in the same way that the university has to afford these rights to people, and they should be allowed to speak, people should be allowed to protest that as well. And people should be able one of the things that people overlook is that in the university system, the students are the customers. And so when the customers who are paying ridiculous amounts in the United States and ending up being an indentured servitude, if they are saying, hey, we as a student body don't think this represents who we want our university to be, then the university has to decide, okay, are we going to listen to those students? And, you can call it caving or whatever, but are we going to pay attention to those? Or are we going to say, no, we value this sort of discourse? And I think that the effectiveness of getting some truly awful things shut down has gone to some people's heads to where now they want to shut down anything that they're opposed to. And my response on this has always been, okay, let's take racists, for example, people espousing white nationalism. Their positions are awful and harmful and disgusting. But I want them to be comfortable enough to come out and identify themselves, in part so we know how many of them there are, how effective they might be, who they might be. But if the ideas aren't expressed, that doesn't mean that the ideas went away. And so if the goal is to change people's minds, you have to have some sort of engagement. Now, if I was putting on a conference, I would never get David Duke, who formerly ran the KKK, I would never get him up as a featured speaker and give him a microphone and a podium at my conference. I might set up a debate about this, but I don't think I need to do either, because those particular ideas have already been hashed out and they're so repugnant that all I need to do is have someone up there who will fairly represent what white nationalists are saying and doing and exposing why it's wrong. That's not the same for every single issue that we could potentially discuss. And so with people up in arms about the Mythos Milwaukee thing, first of all, I'm going to do a video after the conference is over, so I won't include all the information here. But I was the first person booked for that conference. There wasn't anybody else booked. And then I'm contractually obligated to do it. They could have invited way shittier people, and I would still be contractually obligated to be. But even if everybody else had already been booked, like I said, I had no idea who Armored Skeptic and Shoe on Head were. I still don't. But I would still go, as I'm going to, and I'm listen as I'm going to. And then I'm going to take the action that I think is reasonable, which is you counter bad ideas with exposure and better ideas. And the people who want to label that, oh, you just sunlight's the best disinfectant and blah, 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 and we shouldn't even allow them to talk. I'm wondering who's allowing them to object to this speech. And it seems very much kind of a who watches the watchers situation. I'm opposed, Germany and other places, it's illegal to talk about, to engage in Holocaust denialism in public. I'm opposed to that sort of limitation because I think that this is something that's pretty easy to address and valuable to address, so that those ideas aren't spreading around, festering underneath. And then when Germany gets a president that's as bad as ours, all of a sudden it bubbles to the forefront. And now you're moving closer to the next war.
And
Okay,
silence
some
fills the
food for
room.
thought.
Well, that was a very nuanced answer, so it takes a minute to sort of digest that. One thing I will point out is that here in Canada, all major universities receive public funding, so you can't make the argument so easily that it's a private institution and they can choose who they want there. I mean,
I think even in the States, private universities still often receive a certain amount.
Yeah, some, but I mean, in Canada, it's a lot. It's a lot of public. Every major university receives a lot of public funding. They are effectively public universities, right?
The rules are slightly different.
Yeah,
the rules are slightly different because an entirely private university doesn't have to allow anyone to speak if they don't want to.
Right.
But public universities, they have to be equitable in allowing. If Campus Crusade for Christ wants to invite somebody out to speak, somebody's going to be offended. If the atheist group on a campus wants to invite somebody out to speak, somebody's going to be offended.
Yeah.
There's a difference between mere offense and the sort of speech that should be limited, speech that is a direct call to violence and action, a speech that is entirely disruptive on campus. And so when the protesters at Berkeley were protesting Milo, I was pointing out that the campus gets to make their decision for almost whatever reason. There are some constitutional stuff where they can't do certain things, but the campus gets to make up their mind. And Milo should be afforded an opportunity to speak if the campus leadership's okay with it, and the protesters should be allowed to protest. And then somebody, we think it's the protesters, who knows, decides that destruction of property is their way of protesting. And now all of a sudden they've given up the high ground. The people who are running around saying, punch Nazis, you're giving up the high ground. I am opposed to Antifa and to the fascists, and there's no conflict there for me because I'm not saying they're equivalent. I'm not saying I'm opposed to them for the same way and the same reasons. The Antifa folks have the best intentions, and they're just engaging in awful strategies in some situations. The fascists have the worst intentions, and they can engage in some of the worst activities. But when the bad guys are operating within the bounds of the law and maintaining some sort of high ground, when you throw out your high ground the second you say, it's punching. So Richard Spencer's standing on a street giving an interview, and somebody comes up and punches him, and that sets everybody off of, yes, let's punch Nazis. Well, first of all, there are no fucking Nazis. The Nazis a buzzword because it was a political party with armed forces actually engaging in killing people as policy. What you have are neo-Nazis, white supremacists, white nationalists. Oh, Matt, there's no difference. Why would you say that they're not the same? They're not the same because they don't have the power base. And I'm opposed to making sure that I am in agreement that they should not get that power base, but I'm not in agreement on the tactics that some people are using. Now, does that mean that I'm a pacifist who's just, no. When they start engaging in violence, I'm right there. Violence in self-defense and defense of others. But despite what some people have been saying, speech isn't violence. And the example that I use is the smartest thing Richard Spencer could have done is pay someone to come up and punch him during that interview.
That's right.
And
it was good strategy for him.
Yeah. If it would have been good strategy for him, then by definition, it's a bad strategy for the people who are opposed to him to do it for fucking free.
Speaking of Nazis, the Nazis after World War II were put on trial. They didn't just, they had a trial, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't
that's
they didn't just go and punch them and shoot, shoot them all in
what do you think
squads.
of the ACLU's decision to, what do you think of the ACLU's decision to no longer defend groups that are going to bring our weapons to their protests?
I hadn't heard that.
After Charlottesville, because they had defended the Charlottesville Unite the Right, so they defended their right to speak and organize, and then after the fact, they released a statement saying that they would no longer defend people who were bringing guns to their organization or their protests or whatever. So it's an interesting position.
previously used the ACL. Oh crap! I've got some stupid video popped up on there. I used the ACLU as an example before when I discussed this because they had a page about why they defend the rights of Nazis to assemble and stuff. I think, well, I support the ACLU's right to decide, who and how they're going to defend them. I think that may actually be a good decision. I'd have to think about it some more.
Right.
Because if you're going to engage in your free speech, no matter how much somebody finds it to be, but you're going to go there armed, that in itself is problematic. It's like, I'm not a gun nut by any stretch of the imagination, but I depart from some of my liberal friends on gun rights issues. I don't have a gun. Well, actually, I do have an antique .22 rifle, but I don't have a regular gun right now. But it wouldn't bother me to have one. I have friends who have them. I've grown up with guns and blah, blah, blah. I'm not that keen on people having guns in their car just because of road rage. But, maybe there's some restrictions on concealed carry. I don't know for sure what I think about the ACLU's decision, but I think that there may be good reasons for it. And I think that it may encourage the sort of, okay, if we want the protections, we've got to make sure that we're doing this right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It
seemed like a reasonable position for that organization to make. I mean,
it doesn't mean that there won't be some other organization that defends people even if they show up with guns.
Right.
I think it's the ACLU trying to take and encourage a high ground. And they have every right to do that, to decide who they are and aren't going to defend. So if it turns out that maybe another organization steps up and fills in the gap, and maybe I'll agree with them or not. I got to think about this more.
And I mean, even though carrying your guns is not a violent action in itself, but it is a pretty severe intimidation tactic. If you see a bunch of protesters just carrying their guns, that's going to make people hesitate to counter protest or to say anything.
Well, that'll make the counter protesters want to bring their own guns, and then that's just going to get silly.
Yeah. People shooting each other at protests isn't probably the way that society wants to go.
The thing is, I'm pretty sure, I saw some interesting stuff, and I posted, after Sam B talked about this, a link to Life After Hate, Love After Hate, an organization that's helping people leave kind of like the hate groups and white supremacy stuff. He said something interesting, which is that the majority of people that get involved in those things, it's not about an ideology. It's not about just, we hate black people or Mexicans or anybody who's not white. It's more about having a group to belong to. These are people who are ostracized for other reasons. I don't know how many of them are that way. I don't know how accurate that guy's statement is. But I'm certainly in favor of exploring the sort of options that begin with that to see if we can't improve stuff. And the thing I was going to say about Antifa is they're not social justice warriors. They're vigilante justice warriors. They are. It's not the same thing if you're using the fascist tactics. And so it's not that I'm looking for some middle ground group that's halfway between the far right and the far. I want people who are posing bad ideas and doing it in what I think is the right way. And if I'm wrong about what the right way is, I'm open to being convinced, but I'm not going to be convinced just because somebody says, they're Nazis and we should, punch them. And, if it's okay to punch them, can I kick them too? How about, can I use a bat? Or does it have to be my fist? And if there's a man and a woman Nazi standing there, can I punch both of them, or do I have to have my wife punch the woman, so that we're on equal footing? It's a very simple thing to get people on board with outrage. Take their good intentions and say, yes, go punch Nazis. Go punch them. Punch them all. They're awful. It's a much harder thing to do, to say, yes, they are awful. they are worse than the people who are standing in opposition to them by far. But there's a better way to fight them and make sure that they don't get into power and are doing this. Oh, well, you're just being naive, Matt. They're still hateful and they're still killing people and everything else. Yes, we have laws for that. And nobody appointed Antifa to be the police, to enact violence to stop somebody else. Oh, well, we can't trust the police. Oh, the police are all terrorists. It's a sky is falling thing that I don't completely buy into. But the people who are genuinely supporting awful ideas, I am just as opposed to those ideas as the people who are advocating violence for it. I just think there's a better way. And when I express this, those people who are advocating violence call me a Nazi sympathizer. And that tells me almost everything I need to know about how reasonable and rational they are and how likely they are to change minds, because I don't know anybody who's given up their God or their belief that white people are superior because somebody punched them in the face. And if they're going to rallies with guns, and if they're frustrated because they've been behind the scenes and now it's their time and everything else, I think they're looking for violence. And I think violence directed at them amps them up and justifies in their own mind that what they're doing is worth it. And I just think it's a bad strategy.
I mean, Nazism and white supremacy is an idea. And if you want to fight an idea, the best way to do it is with a different idea. And it's not about retaliating with violence to an idea that pretty much never works in any scenario.
Yeah, and I'm not claiming that I necessarily have the right answer. It's just that the people who are advocating for other things haven't made a reasonable case. They haven't, it's a fallacy-ridden name-calling thing. And just for clarity, because somebody's going to listen to this, yes, I'm far more opposed to the fascists than I am. It's like when I point out, hey, I hate cancer and I hate athlete's foot. That doesn't mean I think they're both equally harmful, and I don't, you're just an athlete's foot supporter.
Yeah. Why are you fighting for athlete's foot?
There's a ton of fallacies involved, and I've used the cancer example before for the fallacy of relative privation, where it's basically saying, why are you focused on that issue when it's tiny, when there are really big issues off to the side? That's like going to the Cancer Research Institute and asking why they aren't also working on diabetes and athletes.
You see that a lot with people saying, why don't Black Lives Matter address black on black crime?
Oh yes, I just want to vomit.
Or the argument against foreign aid when you help your own homeless people in your city, but nobody ever does. Just to oppose.
Yeah.
On an astronomical scale, we're like nothing in the universe. We are like some very minor planet and some very minor star and some very unremarkable galaxy. So you can take this argument as far as you want. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. It could literally be, why are you guys sitting there laughing and joking doing a podcast? Why are you eating food when people are starving? Why are you breathing? Why are you not spending every waking hour addressing the absolute worst thing ever? And there's a really easy answer. It's because then all of life would be abysmal. We would make no progress. We would get nothing done.
Welcome to nihilism.
Yeah.
Well, there is a philosophical movement. Oh fuck, I can't remember what it's called now, but where the adherents basically advocate for living off the smallest amount of money you could possibly live off, whatever it is. They say
minimalist.
Yeah, $20,000 or whatever it is, and then everything else beyond what you absolutely need to live should be going to charity. And then they figure out what charities are best optimized to most use your money. Like it costs $3,500 to buy enough mosquito nets to save one person from malaria or something, and therefore,
they came and gave us that presentation.
Yeah, I'm just saying that people make these arguments.
Yeah, there was a group of them that came and gave that presentation in the ACA building, and they used a video from I'm not going to get his name. I'm not going to remember his name. He's awful.
That narrows it down.
And
Is it Donald Trump?
Oh, Peter Singer. He's awful, and he made awful arguments, and this was the foundation for it. And I'm just sitting there going, I'm all in favor of giving mosquito nets, and yeah, they're cheap, and here's some money. Let's go do that. Yeah. But the arguments that were made were like a parade of fallacies and awfulness.
It usually goes something like, would you save a child if you saw them drowning as you were walking by? And then, well, would you still save them if you didn't have time to take off your $400 shoes, but you'd have to ruin your shoes to go in the water? Okay, well then if you'd still save them then why aren't you giving all your money to charity now? Because you're basically killing children. Like it kind of, the argument goes something like that.
Oh my gosh, you and I were at the same event and I didn't even know it.
No, because they make the same argument every time.
I just had weird flashbacks of hearing that on some podcast that I don't remember which one, but I remember hearing that, like the drowning kid.
Well, my boyfriend Sam Harris brought it up before, so
that wouldn't be there.
Actually, Darren McKee mentioned that example when he was on our show.
Oh,
so that's probably where you heard it.
That's probably where I heard it.
Because you were either there or you listened to it because you're smart.
Leo is smart. He listens to the Brainstorm podcast.
Be like Leo.
So I don't want to drone on all night and lecture on every.
No, that's fine.
Free speech, Antifa, blah blah blah. Because I'm already going to get mountains of shit for what I've said so far.
No. Nobody listens to this. It's fine.
We have a limited number of listeners.
I won't be listening to their complaints either.
We're kind of the Google Plus of podcasts.
That's really hurtful, man. That's
so who's the Google Wave of podcasts?
Oh no!
You should be smacking that podcast around all the time. Listen to Brainstorm. We're Google Plus, not Google Wave.
Yeah, that's right.
We have Will. Will will say something.
Yeah, that's true.
And who else? What's his name? Angela's nephew.
Oh, Lachlan.
Lachlan's gonna care.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have
we can name our listeners.
We have a handful. Yeah.
It reminds me of Smalley when he was doing Dogma Debate, and that's how they got to the fourth listener thing, because he said, we got 3 listeners. Well, Matt Dillahunty listened, so 4. And I was like, no, I don't. I mean, no offense. I love you, David, but I don't even listen to my wife's podcast, and I edit the damn thing.
It's hilarious. You're just not a person who likes podcasts, I guess.
It started when I first started doing the TV show. I read a lot. I've read a lot of stuff, and at the time I was listening to, there weren't nearly as many podcasts, 13 and a half years ago when I started doing the show. But I wanted to make sure that if I was going to be on TV, I wanted to be thinking on my feet. I wanted to be saying my stuff and not aping what I heard somebody else say.
Right.
And then it became, to the point where when I was doing debates, I didn't even want to know who my opponent was for fear that I would go listen to what they'd said and prepare for that person. And then I wouldn't be in the moment debating the person who was actually there. This was both a training tool and perhaps a neurosis of mine. And what it then turned into is, between the TV show and the debates and magic shows and everything else, I don't have time. And unlike some people, I know my wife listens to audiobooks, and I know people who are like, here's my 20 podcasts and I'm going to put them on play during the day and I'm going to listen to them while I'm working. I can't do that because I'm either focused on what I'm working on or I'm going to be listening to the podcast. And then I'm going to be pausing it and taking notes. And then I'm going to be wanting to offer rebuttals or clarifications to every. So I just don't do it. What I do is, somebody will say, hey, you really need to listen to like this portion of this show. Because they said something that's, about you or relevant to what you're doing, or here's an argument that you didn't think was particularly good, but this guy has a really good version of it. And so I'll listen to the bits and pieces that, I are relevant. So, I don't even listen to podcasts of some of my friends, some of my really close friends.
I think some people just aren't into it. Like I use it when I'm cleaning or when I'm long drives and that sort of thing. Like it's a really useful thing because sometimes you can't do any, I don't know, I'm neurotic, so I can't just clean the bathroom. I have to be like engaged mentally. So
that's why I stick to like the podcasts I listen to regularly are funny podcasts or like comedy stuff. If it's funny, then I can listen to it while I'm driving. Oh. If I'm trying to learn, then I cannot do it when I'm doing something else.
Really? No, I like it all the time.
Driving, long drives are about the only time I can. The other thing is that I spend so much of my time engaged in these subjects and thinking and arguing and debating and blah, 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 that when I have the downtime, the last thing I want to do is listen to a secular atheist podcast. I'll listen to, I watch a YouTube video about a, video game that I'm playing, or about playing guitar or piano or music or something. I want to learn something that has nothing to do with philosophy or atheism during my downtime.
Right.
And then during my absolute downtime, I don't want to learn anything. I want to put some TV crap on in the background while I actually just sit there and play games or doodle or whatever. It's the way I keep from getting burnt out. When I first started with the atheist experience, Jeff D warned me. He said, "Oh, you're taking on too much stuff. You're the librarian and you're doing the TV show and you're doing the nonprofits and you're doing this. You should be careful. You're going to get burnt out." Well, we're 13 and a half years later. I'm still not burnt out, and it's because I've developed methods of making sure that I'm the only person who truly gets to waste my time, and I it's as much of it as I want.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with that part. I let other people have too much power over my time.
I'm getting better at saying no. I was really worried, like, for example, Penn and Teller, they don't read anything that's written about them. They have people for that. Their goal is to be focused on making sure that they're comfortable with what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Right.
My new way is pretty much the same thing. I will occasionally check YouTube comments when I see them, like one of them pop up and it seems like something I might want to address. Or if somebody says, "Hey, my left ear really loved your video because I forgot to normalize everything, make it mono so that we're getting it out of both ears." So that type of stuff I can fix. But I can post a video about the ontological argument, and within the first few comments, it'll be, "Oh, Matt's a SJW cuck who supports atheism, blah, 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 blah." It has nothing to do with it. And they're still dragging this grudge around from something that maybe didn't even happen, but to whatever extent it did happen, it happened years ago.
Yeah. How is Atheism Plus even still coming up?
And it never stops coming up. I mean, I'm friends with Rebecca Watson, and Elevator Gate doesn't even stop coming up.
Yeah. Jeez.
And I'm fully, absolutely supportive of Rebecca, and she was absolutely right in everything she said. And then the catastrophe that happened afterwards had nothing to do with what she actually said. It was so weird, but it comes up all the time. And Atheism Plus was atheism plus humanism plus skepticism plus social justice, all things that I'm in favor of. And so I was there in the ground floor. But Atheism Plus, the idea, is not the same as Atheism Plus, the insular forum full of irrational, well, not completely full of some decent people, but it's not the same thing. It's not a movement. And so my support for it wasn't, I'm going to support this new thing where we're going to tell everybody how to do atheism right. And, it was, I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist, I'm a skeptic, I support social justice issues. Of course I support these things. And I support them together. I think they're intertwined.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I'm in agreement with what some jackass posted on a forum somewhere. It's ridiculous how, you're associated with this label. Therefore, everything I've ever heard about that label from somebody else applies to you.
Yeah.
And the example that I repeatedly use is, what's the feminist position on pornography? There isn't one. If you talk to Sunsara Taylor or Taslima Nasreen, they're both feminists and they're both vehemently anti-porn. And if you talk to Greta Christina, she's a feminist and she edits a freaking porn magazine and is a former sex worker. So the fact that somebody thinks feminism has a uniform position on almost anything, and this is the problem. This is why I'm good with the atheist label. It's because it's about one thing.
Right.
I'm good with the humanist label because I can expressly codify the things about humanism that I think are part of humanism. I can give you my definition and view of it. Same thing with feminism or anything else. When we try to put 20 positions under one label, and then we find out that people using that label agree and disagree with those 20 positions, it muddies the waters. And yet, curiously, almost nobody thinks, every Republican agrees with everything in the Republican Party platform. They fundamentally know that that's not the case because they're either a Republican or Democrat, and they know that they don't agree with everything in the platform. So how is it that we can instantly recognize this when it's convenient on political issues,
right,
and then ignore it when we want to throw the other side in a bucket because we're too lazy to actually engage and have a conversation and find out what one individual thinks. Okay, sermon over.
Perfect. We've actually kept you for even longer than I had planned, so we're going to go to a break and we're going to let you go. Thank you for joining us. I guess, do you have a website that you want to plug specifically? I guess you mentioned some stuff earlier, but.
Yeah, they can go to mattdillahunty.com, which is where they'll find the calendar for events and stuff like that. And the way I actually make my money is at patreon.com/atheistdebates. I post the debates I do. I post reviews of those debates. I post 15 to 45-minute videos covering a particular argument in enough detail. So, and simplified, I had to simplify it for me to understand it, so hopefully everybody else can too. So this isn't just about teaching you how to have a big public debates. It's when you're engaged with your mom or your aunt or somebody at work, and they aren't presenting a formal, structured version of the teleological arguments, you can still identify that that's actually what they're talking about, because we're talking about those arguments in kind of plain language and in their various forms. Like, look at the trees is just a version of the teleological argument.
Nice.
So yeah,
awesome.
Patreon.com/atheistdebates and mattdillahunty.com. And maybe I should get here's a jackass who's wrong about everything.com. And then when people make those comments, I can say, look, I already know that. It's my website.
Here's my website. Awesome. Thanks for joining us again, and have a good night.
Absolutely. You guys too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care.
All right. Somebody want to click that button? Perfect. Okay. So we skipped right over our ad break. We're going to go into our music break. So this is where we'll take the break for music. For live listeners and patrons, you can enjoy the next few minutes, and we'll be back. For regular feed subscribers, this is where we'll end the Skeptic Studio. Remember to check out the Shift to Reason Radio next week to hear listener feedback, new patrons, and iTunes reviews. This week's music break is Doomsday by Architects, Oh Lord by In This Moment, and Praying by Kesha. Let's cue that outro music.
I don't know. Okay.
So you can check out the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. Thanks to our financial supporters, Will, Lisa, Rob, Aaron, Nathan, Daryl, Stephanie, Positively Skeptical, Michael, Lachlan, Magnus, and Alden. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest from tonight, Matt Dillahunty. Links to all his stuff will be available in the show notes on thebrainstormpodcast.com or on brainstormblog.net. You can join us live every second week when we broadcast live on Spreaker. You can find us at Spreaker.com/user/brainstormpodcast. Our next guest is Brother Brewer of the Skeptics Brew Pub. You might remember that he interviewed us as a crew a few months ago. And thanks to Dave for our intro music. Thanks to Alex Capper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for the intro and some of our ads. And thanks to Jason Camo for our outro music. You can find his stuff over at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. I think that's everything, so give us a rating, a thumbs up, or a favorite on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, share the show, and spread the word. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors. We
wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interactions with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.